Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today we are going to be doing a beginner's tutorial. I figured it would be very helpful to kind of slow down the process of assembling an art doll. That way if anyone is having issues with it, that you can kind of see a little closer example of what I do to put my dolls together. So in this video I have all the pieces ready to make a dragon and we're going to put it together. Anyways, let's get started. Okay guys, so right now I have all the pieces for my dragon ready. I have all the clay pieces, the head, the feet, I have the sewing done for the main pieces of the body that I can get done before putting it together. I have horns and a wireframe. So I'm going to start by taking the wireframe and the fabric for the body and putting those together first. So I'm going to use the wireframe as a guide right now and figure out where I need to cut some holes for the wires for the legs to run through the fabric for the body. So I'm going to mark that out, cut those, and then I'm going to take that wireframe and run those wires through those holes and kind of basically slide the fabric over the wireframe. And then I'm going to take our clay head and our horns and we're going to add those to the wireframe. I'm going to start with the clay head first. Now my clay heads tend to have a foil base inside of them and it's open in the back of the head. So basically when I take it off of the glass container, there's an opening where you can see the tin foil. So I'm going to make a hole in the tin foil, fill that with hot glue, and then I'm going to take that wire for the neck and I'm going to stick that into that glue. I'm going to hold the wire in place until it completely hardens, and then what we can do next is add the horns. So normally I have my horns already connected to the head like I said, but this time around I decided to try something different. That way I could see if I could make them posable. So what I did was ahead of time I drilled some holes into the base of the horns. That way we had a spot to add a wire. I filled that with glue just like we did with the back of the head, and I added some wires to those horns. And then I went back to the head and I added holes where we can glue those horns in place into the foil. So I took those, I filled those with glue, I placed the horns, I held them until everything hardened, and then I double checked that they were nice and firmly in place. Now I'm going to take the fabric for the neck and I'm going to start gluing it around the base of the head. I'm going to cut some little slits into the fabric, that way I can glue around the horns, and I'm just going to use my fabric glue and start gluing it and getting everything completely connected. Now if you notice, the fabric doesn't go all the way around the head, and that's because I don't really take the time to figure out how round my head is going to be, so I just usually adjust it afterwards. I find it's just easier to add a little bit more fabric and not have to take that extra time to figure out the length of it. It's just me being lazy. So I'll just measure how much space I need to fill, cut a piece of fabric to fit that space, and then just glue it into place like I did the rest of the fabric. Now, of course, you're going to have to let everything dry for a little bit, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start closing up the body. So I'm going to take my needle and thread and I'm going to start sewing everything together. So I tend to normally use a ladder stitch for this, and I'm just going to go maybe about 2-3 inches down the neck. I'm going to start at the base of the head and work my way down the neck. I'm going to stop sewing and I'm going to stuff that portion, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sew roughly 2 to 3 inches, add more stuffing, and just keep going until I get to the very end of the tail. Now with closing up this dragon, if you notice, I'm closing up the belly, but sometimes it's easier to do it the other way around and basically stuff and close it up using the back. It really just depends on your preference, and of course if you're adding wings or not. Sometimes sewing the belly closed when you have wings is just easier. And then once I have the body completely stuffed and closed up, now we're going to start shaving down the fur. Now if you want a really fluffy dragon, you're welcome to leave all of this, but I find that the extra length of the fur makes it really difficult to sew the legs into place. It's just all over the place, it gets snagged in the thread, and also I just like shaping the body a little bit more. So I'm just going to take my hair trimmer and I'm going to go down the sides of the dragon. I'm going to focus mainly on trimming the fur on the sides. That way it just makes sewing the fabric for the legs in place a lot easier. It also helps shape the body, plus I want to have a little bit of fluff on the chest and the back of the dragon. I mean, there is a reason I did use fur fabric for this piece. Then once I have the fur all trimmed up, I can start adding the fabric for the legs. So I tend to like to work on the front legs first, get those both completely put together, and then move on to doing the back legs. I find it's a little less hectic if I'm just doing 2 at a time, plus it helps to work on 2 at a time, that way you can make sure they're placed correctly, they're nice and even, same length and stuff like that. Now, if my dragon had wings on its front legs, like a wyvern, I would probably do the back legs first, just so those are not in the way, because the wings tend to be a little bit annoying when you're working on adding limbs. So I'll tend to start with the fabric that goes on the inside of the legs, the part that will go under the wire. I tend to do this on both legs first. That way I can make sure the legs are in the same spot on both sides of the body. I don't have one just slightly more forward. And then I'll work on the fabric that will go over the wire, which is kind of more of the shoulder blade. And I'll just sew that in place completely as well. Once I have the fabric sewn into place for both of the front legs, I'm going to move on to adding the clay feet to the wireframe. So the wires for the frame right now are a little longer than normal. I tend to cut them to make sure I have a little bit of extra to work with. So I'm just going to bend them into the length that I need them to fit, and then I'm going to take the wires that are sticking out of our clay front legs, and I'm going to take a 20 gauge wire and wrap those two wires together nice and firm. Then once I have my clay legs on the wireframe, I'm then going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to go over that portion of wire that we have wrapped. This is mainly to help protect the connection and make sure that it doesn't rub inside of the fabric body, and it just makes sure that everything is locked into place a little bit more. It's kind of like a little rubbery covering to help protect it. While doing this, you just want to be very careful to not have the hot glue drip on any of your fur fabric, so I usually will hold all the fabric out of the way and let it completely dry first, so I won't leave it sitting somewhere to dry. I'll kind of like watch it until it's completely dried, just to make sure that it doesn't get on the fur or it doesn't drip weird and have like a lump of glue. Now at this point, I need to show you guys how to finish the legs, obviously, but I had a memory card corrupt, so I don't have all of the footage for making the legs. I completely had this finished and the card corrupted, so we're going to switch over temporarily to another dragon that I've been working on, and I'm going to show you guys what I did to the legs with this dragon. Now sadly, because this dragon isn't furry, I can't show you the shaving of the legs, but it's pretty much the same as doing the body. So we're at the same stage, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that fabric for the legs, I'm going to add some glue at the very end of it, and I'm going to wrap this around the clay leg where I want the fabric to connect. So I'm just going to start at the front and wrap my way around. If the fabric is a little long, I'll have to adjust it. If it's a little short, I'll have to add a little bit of extra, kind of like we did with the clay head. I'm going to let the glue dry for a little bit, and then I'm going to start stuffing and closing up the back of the legs. This is basically the same thing that we did to the body, just kind of a little bit smaller scale. And like I said, there's really nothing to shave on this dragon, so let's get back to the other dragon that we originally started with. So with the original dragon that we've been working on, we're basically done with the body. All the legs are connected. Again, sorry I couldn't show you. And now what we're going to do is we're going to work on finishing the face. So I'm going to start by adding some ears. Now I've had a couple of you guys ask for tutorials on how to make ears, so I think our next basic tutorial will probably be working on some ears and making a few variations of them. Now adding the ears is actually really simple. I have some holes already sculpted into the clay head, and we're just going to glue these in place inside of those holes. Now if you don't sculpt any holes for your ears to go, you could just connect them in the same way that we added the horns to the head. Then we're just going to need to fur our face. So with large portions, I tend to take my fur fabric and I'll cut pieces to fit and glue those into place. So I'm going to do that with the under portion of the head, kind of the lower jaw, and then I'm going to take some trimmings and cover up the rest of the face. So I'm going to take a different type of fur fabric that dries a little slower, and I'm going to paint it onto the surface where I want to add fur. I'm going to make sure it's nice and evenly placed on the face, and then I'm going to take my fur trimmings and I'm going to use some tweezers and kind of lightly place the fur into the glue. I'm going to poke at it and make sure that everything is nice and stuck in the glue, and then I'll have to let it dry. Once the first layer is dry, I'm going to double check that everything's stuck to it. I'm going to take a brush and just kind of lightly brush away any fur that's not stuck in place on the glue. And if I have any bald spots, I'll take some more glue and I'll just kind of touch it up. Or I might even do a second layer if I want to. Okay guys, and this is the dragon that I put together. I'm really happy with him. I love the colors, and I'm going to have him in my Etsy shop if anyone wants to give him a home. So I'll have links down below for that. And then also, I figured I'd show you guys the finished other dragon that we were working on, which was a commission. So I got this little guy all put together, and I need to still take photos of him and show him off to the buyer that ordered him. Anyways, I really hope today's video was informative and was helpful if anyone was trying to put an art doll together and was just kind of struggling a little bit. Also, I'm really sorry that we couldn't go from beginning to end with the same dragon. It really bugs me that I couldn't do it, but at least I could show you guys how to actually put it together. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe to all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!